So, hello. Thank you so much for being here today. We're going to be starting, and as the conversation will go on, we're going to be succinctly. My name is Maria Chiara Metestre, and I'm an integration practitioner based in Portugal. And for 3 years now, I've been collaborating with the Loural Ecovillage, which is a beautiful retreat center in the interior of Portugal. And throughout this time, I've been observing how these kind of experiences, they can really lead to powerful transformation and integration and really deep learning. And I started to imagine how these kind of spaces and experiences could be offered to the SI community at large. So that's a bit how the project Fascia Integration was born. And for the very first retreat in September, from the 16th to the 20th, I have invited Bert Schmitz to lead the retreat. He's an advanced rolfer with over 40 years of experience, but also a psychotherapist, a psychologist, and a mindfulness trainer. So he combines not only huge experience in the SI work, but a very deep understanding of our condition and as human. And I thought it would be also really interesting to reflect on that, on our therapeutic relation. And that's where he's an expert in. So today it's our second conversation. And we invited Pedro Goucha to participate. So Pedro Goucha Gomes is a Portuguese somatic practitioner, certified teacher of the Feldenkrais Method, and a former professional dancer. His path in movement began at the age of 9, leading to an international dance career with renowned companies such as the Dance Theater Wuppertal and the Netherlands Dance Theater. In his early 20s, a journey to Japan awakened a deep interest in meditation, which profoundly transformed his relationship to movement. His exploration led him to become a mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher. Continuing his inquiry into the body and awareness, he studied somatic movement and became a certified practitioner of the Feldenkrais Method. Today, his work brings together meditation, somatics, dance, and permaculture, offering classes, workshops, and retreats that invite a more integrated and respectful relationship with oneself, others, and the natural world. So I hope that is a good introduction. And we have invited Pedro to lead 2 classes during the retreat. He will talk more about it during the interview. Maybe I would be curious to know from Pedro, hello, a little bit more about your experience in Japan and what happened there.
Oh, well, so that was a long time ago. I was probably 20, maybe 21. I was on tour with the company I was dancing at the moment, which was a German company, Stuttgart Ballet. And so I was a young dancer and I didn't have much to do, but we went on tour to Japan for 3 weeks. So I had plenty of time to explore. And I went probably a bit unprepared. I mean, we're talking about early 90s. There was no internet. And I just went, I was told to go and I went. And suddenly I encountered very, very interesting culture. Because I had time to spare and to explore, I was the kind of person that the moment I would land, even if I was totally jet lagged, I would just drop my suitcase and go and explore, even if I was very tired. I was very curious. And so I got fascinated with the food, of course. I got fascinated with the old architecture. And then I went to some temples and I started to enter into the world of Zen. And but the big shift happened once when I went to visit the temple. And I mean, this was happening in Tokyo. Okay, so it was particularly in the 90s. It was a whole different world compared to Europe. It was way more advanced, probably similar to what Beijing or Shanghai might be today. So I arrived there and I went to visit a temple. And there was a monk who was in a patch of soil. He had a grass, and he was taking the grass one by one. So half of this patch grass was without grass, so it was just soil, and the other one had grass. And he was there taking one by one. I mean, this is in Tokyo, so you could just go outside and get a machine and just clean it all in 2 minutes. So I was looking at that, and I couldn't understand what was going on, but I could understand that something very valuable and interesting was going on. And so I started to get more curious about the culture and Zen and so on. And it really shifted the way I perceive time. I understood, yeah, and it's just, when you perceive time differently, everything changes, basically. And if you have also an idea of death that might be different, also everything changes, life changes. And so that was the beginning of a very interesting exploration, and it still continues.
Beautiful. So let's delve in right away into the Feldenkrais method. So how did you first encounter the Feldenkrais method, and what made you stay with it?
The first time I encountered the Feldenkrais method was in the early 90s, even before I was a professional dancer. I was in school, and I had a very open-minded teacher, and he introduced me to the Feldenkrais method. He taught me some lessons that I've actually been practicing since then. So I practiced them throughout my entire dancing career. It really helped me. But I didn't know exactly what I was doing. Then once I studied, I realized what it was. And of course, I was doing it slightly different. But it had an incredible impact on my, on mainly was the movement of my arms, because I was doing some things with my shoulders. So that was the first time. And then later on, when I stopped dancing, there was a friend who I crossed, and he had taken he was a Feldenkrais practitioner. He did some of my dance classes, and he was like, "You have to do this." And I tried out, and it was really very interesting. And I decided to just pursue the training. Yeah, and then I realized that it was extremely useful for my for my entire sense of self and my health and my movement, and that's why I continued with it, because I just felt so good afterwards. I just always felt light, and I felt everything was easier, and I was more perceptive. I could, I was more, um, I could perceive things that usually they were not really there. I couldn't see them, and suddenly they became present, both in myself and around me. And of course, that's very valuable when you are a curious person who likes to interact and relate with, and you like details, and you know. So yeah, so I really grew as a person through the method.
So tell us a little bit about the training itself, and maybe the different modalities of the Feldenkrais method, so that we understand a little bit better what is it that we're talking about.
So the Feldenkrais is a bit like Rolfing. It's the name of the person who found the method. So Rolfing comes from either Rolf. The Feldenkrais method comes from Moshe Feldenkrais. But then there is, within the Feldenkrais method, there are two modalities. There's movement lessons that can be done in group. I can be guiding a class, even online, but in a studio with 20 people, and everybody follows the indications that I give. So these are group lessons. They're called awareness through movement. So as the name implies, we are working on awareness, and we use movement to work on awareness. So the important thing is not exactly the movement, but it's the awareness that we bring to that experience. So that's awareness through movement, also known as ATM. And the other modality is hands-on, one-to-one sessions, and it's called functional integration. So, of course, for the rolfers, this is very interesting because the name itself is very close to structural integration, and I think the names, they also somehow point to the dialogue that was going on between Moshe Feldenkrais and Ida Rolf. So, structural integration, functional integration. Functional integration means that Moshe Feldenkrais, also as a martial artist, he was interested in function, in movement. So therefore we also do the awareness through movement. So it's concerned with movement. So as an example, if somebody comes to me and says, I have neck pain, I don't know really what they mean, but if they tell me my neck hurts when I turn to the right, I do have something to work on. I have a function. It's when the head moves to the right. And then we work from there. We start to look at how the body behaves, how this person looks to the right. Do they use the shoulders? Do they use the ribs? Do they use the sit bones? How do they use the eyes? And you just start to observe how the movement, how the movement progresses, and how this person looks to the right, the whole person. So we don't just look at the neck. In fact, sometimes we don't even work on the particular area of pain. We try to work on the rest, because the whole self is always present. But sometimes we just look to the right and we think that, okay, so it must be my neck. But in fact, maybe it's not just the neck, of course. So there's the awareness through movement, and there's the functional integration. Hands-on, very gentle movements, and focused on function, on movement. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the training? How does your training occur, and how is it organized, and why, maybe?
Well, the trainings are 4 years, 4 years of training, with a few modules per year, depending on the training, but usually depending on the length of each module, but about 3 modules a year of between 2 to 3 weeks. So that's 7, 8 weeks a year for 4 years. The first 2 years usually are focused on awareness through movement, on the movement. Of course, there's some touch already, some trainings from the beginning, but the main focus is on awareness through movement, and that's because we bring a lot of attention to how we move, and to that sense of movement and awareness, self-awareness, before we start to touch the other person. And that's very important. And only then, the second half of the training, then we focus mainly on touch, although we continue our awareness through movement training throughout the 4 years. And that's very interesting how we first, because awareness through movement, basically, when we think of a movement modality, we think of doing something. But I would say that a lot of the awareness through movement classes are about undoing. So because of the awareness, you start to undo and let go patterns of holding. You start to even let go perhaps some ideas and some fixed ideas you have about yourself and about how you move, or about how something feels or not feels. So it's really a process of self-exploration, and I think it's very interesting that we take such a long time to really delve into that process before we start to then touch the other, because actually, where does the other one start? Or where do you end and the other one starts when it comes to touch? What are we talking about when we're talking about touch? Because movement, when you move, you're touching yourself. Your tissues there's friction, there's pulling, there's pushing, there's contraction. the muscles, the nervous system tells the muscles to move, and then they carry the bone to wherever you want to go. So so you're touching yourself, and you can sense it from within too. There's a language of sensation that you become more and more then you are able to understand, you know. So once that is more integrated, then you are more receptive to what are you feeling when you're touching the other person and how the other person touches. So there's a process of recognition to my understanding. The moment you become aware of all those micro movements that happen in yourself, you see them happening around you too, with more definition, clarity. And that's very, very important. So you start to become really fluent in that language of movement, in the language of physical sensation and awareness.
And that's very interesting that you go through that process of almost knowing and re-knowing yourself during the training. And do you practice nowadays? And what have you felt through the years? Because it's been, I don't know how many years it's been now that you do this method and you practice and you do your classes. What have you felt that that has changed in you, or that this method has brought to light into your life?
Well, I practice as part of my life. Maybe not now in a daily basis as it used to be, simply because I have kids, and sometimes I just don't find the time. But it's part of my daily way of being. And whenever I can, I practice. So I do practice every week, maybe once, maybe twice, and when I'm lucky, I practice every day. So practice means you either give hands-on sessions, of course, or you do the movement sessions yourself. So I find that they're complementary. I think that it's very important to continue doing the awareness through movement lessons on yourself in order to be more present when you do the hands-on. So that's one of the things. But there are different practices, although they somehow are the same, but they're different, because once you're moving and the other one you're touching. But I would say that, well, like you said, I was a professional dancer. I started dancing when I was 9. I'm 53 now. I still teach. I had a very intense professional career where I was dancing for years, every day. I don't know, 100 performances a season, maybe all kinds of different programs, like 10 different programs. So then it was very, very intense. And I'm absolutely without injuries. I feel in my movement today, and I think it's due to the Feldenkrais method, I feel even better than I did when I was a dancer. We think of dancers as being like extremely healthy. Well, yes, we can do exceptional things, often with a lot of effort and often through a lot of pain. And sometimes once we stop dancing, we carry that pain and actually can get worse. Well, I don't think it's genetic. I think it's because of I started with the Feldenkrais training, and in the right moment after I finished dancing professionally, I'm totally pain-free. Okay, and that's very interesting for me. Of course, it feels great, but it's really really interesting. And so I am to myself the example that this method can really help. And not only that, I have a greater awareness than I did when I was a dancer. I'm more aware of how things are organized inside of myself, like in basic movements, basic things like you want to reach to pick up a book from the bookshelf, you want to go down to pick up your kid, you are cooking, you are sitting, and somehow it just works. Somehow it just makes more sense because exactly because you kind of go through a process of undoing holding patterns that were making certain things more difficult, and you start to reorganize your body in a way that it becomes much more easy to to navigate the field of gravity, you know. And so what it does, in fact, is that between the intention of doing something such as reaching, to pick up a book, and then the actual doing. So there is a translation there between an intention and an action. Usually you don't really sense it. You just do it. But actually, I think the Feldenkrais method, what it does is that it clarifies that translation. So because when I reach to pick up a book, I don't want to get hurt. I just want to pick up the book. So if I get hurt, something wrong happened in the pathway that was not part of my plan. So and I think the Feldenkrais method really helps to clarify the intention and to translate it into an action in which your whole system is participating in a functional way. Okay, so that and the truth is that unfortunately many times our actions do not match our intentions because something gets lost along that translation. And I think the Feldenkrais method really helps align those two things. So yeah, I think when I understood that, that first millimeter of movement between your intention and your action, that first millimeter of movement contains within itself very often all the holding patterns. And then as the movement becomes bigger, that just gets all those patterns and so on, and habituations that it required ever since you were born just are magnified. But so if you're able to, through the awareness of movement and through sessions of functional integration, get rid of that, because the nervous system just basically learns. We will learn forever. And so let's go of unnecessary patterns. And so, yeah, it feels free, and I hope to maintain this through my old age. I'm 53, so I hope in 20 years I can still continue feeling like this. And I'm pretty sure that if I continue doing this, I will feel, I think I will feel good, at least in my movement.
Sometimes I've been practicing, as you know, sometimes the Feldenkrais method, and actually when at times clients ask me how they move on after a process of structural integration, I often tell them to continue or to try to look into the Feldenkrais method in order to continue their growing and their feeling further. And what I find also very interesting for myself when I do practice the Feldenkrais method, it's also not only a clarity in movement and therefore being able to clarify how is it that I move and how is it that I am in space, but how that also translates into the clarity of the mind, of the thoughts. So what I find very interesting of the Feldenkrais method is, yes, the physical dimension of learning how to do something in a better way, that it's more efficient, but it's also how that creates a different way of being and acting in the world. And actually, we have talked before about how the Feldenkrais method also, instead of observing posture, which is something that we can understand in a physical way, but we look into it more as behavior, how easy that we are. But in the Feldenkrais method, I think, or Moshe Feldenkrais was calling it acture. So maybe you can say something about that.
Yeah, so that's really very interesting. Acture, it's a word that he sort of invented that brings action and posture together. And that's very interesting because often I think in popular culture, people imagine posture as as a static position. So, for example, people that have been to the army. So, for example, my father's generation, before you had to go to the army when you were 18 or something, and so for them to sit straight is like that. That's the right posture. Now that's ridiculous, of course, because you can't do anything. First of all, it's a position, a posture of submission. It's not. That's you're not human when you stand like that. If somebody screams and you do that, so just the beginning is already totally wrong. Then you're not straight. Like, I mean, there's probably each person stands in a different way. Anyway, that's not a. So if we think, it's important to think of posture to broaden our sense of posture. And I think what the word acture brings, it's not a particularly beautiful word, but it works. What that word brings is movement and its dynamics. So, for example, if I want to tie my shoelaces, I'm going to be in a probably asymmetrical posture. Maybe I bring my foot up to a chair, and then the other one is holding me. I bring it up, and then I bend over to reach my hands to my shoelaces, or maybe I go all the way down. There's many different ways. So the important thing to think, in my view, is that although it's absolutely that position is absolutely asymmetrical, maybe my head is at the level of my pelvis. I don't know, depending on the person. The foot is up here, but that is the right posture to do that movement, as long, of course, as you don't get hurt and as long as it works for you. Maybe when you're 5, you tie your shoelaces in a different way than when you are 30 or when you are 70. And they're all correct because they all are the best way your system can find to do that action. So it's not about, like, particularly if you don't use unnecessary power and effort. So again, when I'm reaching my arm to pick up a book, my body, my ribs, if I reach my right arm, my ribs on the right are going to somehow, they're going to expand. My ribs on the left, my spine is I'm gonna side bend. I'm probably going to shift my weight to the leg, to the foot and leg of the arm that I extend. That's how I'll extend the most easy way without effort. So it's not a symmetrical position, but it's the right acture. It's the posture that I naturally will take that helps me the most to achieve my intention, which is to take that book. So that's very interesting because and you see that in dancers, they're constantly changing position. They do all kinds of different, very complex things. And ideally, you could do that, ideally, although the process might be hard and it might take a lot of time until you can coordinate it. But so that idea of a dynamic posture is very important. That's one thing that I would like to say. And yeah.
But you've gone also through the process of structural integration. You took your 10 sessions a couple of years ago. So, from the inside, a little bit about our work. And I'm curious to know, how was that for you? And also, as we're going to be doing a couple of classes in the retreat, what do you think that awareness of the movement and your specific way of maybe dissecting movement, and then maybe later on we're going to try a little class. How can that complement the work of a Rolfer, and why do you think it was a good choice to have you in the retreat, or this kind of practice to add to the kind of work that we're going to be doing with Bert? Also, Bert. So
yeah.
Where is the connection?
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of parts to your question. Yeah. So concerning my experience with the 10 sessions of structural integration, they were amazing. It was really a fantastic process of discovery. And I do think that to a certain extent, it accelerated some of the processes I was going through in the Feldenkrais method. So, it's a process that can take your entire life. This relationship with gravity and with yourself and with your body and with your intentions and how to turn them into your life and so on. So the 10 sessions, there was a lot of aha moments. We all in the somatic world, and we all love the aha moments. And I had a lot of them. Each session gave me a few aha moments. And they also, of course, because I'm a Feldenkrais teacher, I was going through my process, as I said, and suddenly it was like, oh, wow, like, okay, that's a really interesting solution of how to resolve that, that question that I had. So it was really, really interesting for me. And, I know that sometimes they say, okay, you can do it once in your lifetime or two. I'm going to do more. I'm very interested in doing more. I'm maybe that's because of my nature, but I'm curious in doing it again and again. So that was very interesting. And yet I found also that afterwards, I couldn't wait to go back to my Feldenkrais work, because I knew that work that I did with structural integration was going to complement my research and my exploration and my work as a functional integrator and as a awareness to movement teacher. So and I think that to have those 10 sessions and then to continue the work with the Feldenkrais, with the awareness through movement, or an occasional functional integration session, is amazing. And this is something interesting. So Moshe Feldenkrais he spoke sometimes about form follows function. Okay. So, and there might be arguments that say the opposite. He was basing himself also on evolution. So when fish comes out of the water, the form will change. In the water, they breathe in a certain way, and then they get outside and they need lungs because they will breathe oxygen. So the form of the anatomy of the physiology changes according to the function, which is very interesting. But also, of course, that if I sit for hours and hours like this in front of the computer, for 15 years, my form will eventually, follow that function, that the form that I'm spending my hours in, and the emotion and the stress, and so everything will somehow take that form. I remember seeing an amazing pianist once in a concert, and he was a continuation of the piano there. He had this big, beautiful, piano, and there was a seat, and there was him. He was dressed in black and white, so the colors of the piano. And then you could see that he spent years and years and years in front of the piano, because he was just a continuation. It was like the same shape. That piano without the pianist there wouldn't make sense. So it's interesting that if you, after, I think, the 10 sessions of functional integration, this is of course my opinion, and if you then just go back to your daily thing, maybe in 5 years, some of those habits, maybe they won't come back, or maybe they will. I don't know. But what I think that works really well is then to continue with the awareness to movement. So that combination, I think, is just magical. And I think I don't know. Of course, I'd love to hear the big discussions that Moshe Feldenkrais and Ida Rolf had. But I'm sure that they would probably agree, even though, of course, they had their differences. But I'd like to know what they would say if they would do the 10 sessions and then they would do the awareness through movement. The results are amazing. I think so that's one thing. The other thing you asked that I think it's important, and like many other movement practices, for example, you go to the gym, and in anything I'm saying, there's no judgment, okay? But you go to the gym and you do a set of things, you do yoga. I did yoga for many years. I loved yoga. but you do poses that are not very practical. Like, I mean, you know, like you don't use those poses in your daily basis, in your day. But with the Feldenkrais method, then very interesting thing is that all the movements you do, they're like you said, you call them, they're like dissections of movements that you do every day. So there's a practicality to it. You're not doing movements that you need to be in a studio to do, you know, and hold. No, everything you do, you actually do it in a daily basis, maybe thousands of times a day, like moving your eyes, moving your tongue, you know, turning your head, observing how you breathe. I mean, there's more than 1,000 awareness through movement lessons. There's lessons for every movement of your body. You know, the closing and opening the hand, reaching, pulling, grasping, letting go, turning the head, opening the mouth. So everything is very, very practical. And that is an element from the awareness through movement that I really like. So you're basically dissecting those actions, those gestures. For example, if you go in the kitchen and you open a drawer to take a fork, you know, and then you close it. If you actually dissect that gesture, that action, there's several movements happening. You know, like you reach, you know, you open the hand, depending on where the knob is to pull the drawer, you close your hand, you pull, you know, you reach with the other one, you take, you close again. So there's all these shifts of weight. There's a movement of the shoulders, the hand, and then so of the eyes, where it is, where it's not. So if you really dissect it, there's so we in Feldenkrais we are a bit like scientists of movement, but we experiment in ourselves, and but we are very gentle scientists. We are very curious, but we are very gentle as well. So we observe it also. We do the smallest movement. We do with the least amount of effort. Whenever we feel this pain, we don't go there. You know, we are within the range of comfort. In order, because then if you feel pain, you can't feel the detail of the movement anymore. So you always try to do within a range of movement, basically like babies. We move like babies again, but with an adult's mind at play. And that's very beautiful. So in the Feldenkrais method, it's as if you revive your developmental process of when you were a baby before you on your way to standing up, you know, those 10, 12, 14 months. You revive that period of your life that you went through unconsciously, but you do it consciously. You do it with an adult's brain, but you go through the same actions, through the same movements. And so your brain, you sort of undo some of the patterns that you've acquired in that process that maybe were not fully ideal, let's say. Not for any bad reason, just maybe because you are the third child and you have two young older brothers who are running around, you know, and you want to play with them. So maybe, you know, there's this thing of participating, or maybe you're the first child and you spend your time with your grandparents because your parents are working, and so they're not so active, so you're a bit more passive. So maybe it takes there's no judgment. Each one of us has our story, and that story is somehow recorded in our nervous system, and it has a saying in that whole process that brought us to standing and to relate to the world, you know, and to move. And so it's very nice to go to observe that with a very aware, conscious, mature mind. Yeah.
Could you maybe give us a little demonstration of what to make it even
Yeah.
more concrete or practical, what we will be exploring in the retreat, but also just a class for us. Maybe now we don't have so much time left,
Yes.
but it would be wonderful to have a little practical demonstration.
Yeah, sure. So I'll give just a lesson. So as I said, there's more than 1,000 lessons. I mean, the level of creativity of Moshe Feldenkrais. It was just, and for me as a dancer who also choreographed for a few years, to see how he composed and choreographed all these classes is really remarkable. But I will give a little taste, like really like when you have a taste of a perfume and you just go, and it already tells you a lot about that perfume. I think I'll give a little taste of also it's easy. Most of the lessons are done lying down, but because we are here, we can do it sitting down. Okay. So first of all, many classes, not necessarily, but many lessons are done with the eyes closed. So if you can close your eyes, if you want to try, you can close them just to sense more of yourself inside, although it's not necessary. But find a comfortable position to sit down. So maybe a symmetrical position where your legs are more or less, they're not crossed, and you can place your hands on top of your thighs, either facing down or facing up as you wish. And then you close your eyes and you sense the contact of your sit bones with the surface of the chair. Try not to try to be away from the back of the chair. So just see if you can sit in a comfortable position without resting your back on the chair. And then sense, just for a moment, sense the contact of your sit bones with the surface of the chair. Notice if there's any difference between how the right sit bone and the left sitting bone are making contact. If you can't find them, you can put your fingers right down there. You can feel with the fingers of the right hand, you can feel the right sitting bone, and then you lift the left cheek, and then you try it with the left, and to feel two big bones there. And just place the hands on top of your thighs, either with the palms facing down or up, and just sense yourself for a moment. Noticing if you're breathing. And then take your attention to your right hand. And the hand is actually many things. And so you could take your attention to how you sense the right hand. And then take your attention to how you sense the palm of the right hand. And then compare it to how you sense the back of your right hand. You might feel different temperatures or totally different story. Each part of your hand tells you a totally different story, perhaps. And then you can bring your attention to your right thumb. Sense it from inside, from the inside. You don't want to think about it. You want to sense it. It's alive. And then take your attention to the right index finger. To the right middle finger. To the ring finger. To the pinky right finger. And then sense your right hand as a whole. The palm, the back, the 5 fingers. And then compare that with your sensation of the left hand. Do they feel similar? Do they feel different? Does one feel bigger than the other or warmer than the other? And then take your attention to the left hand and sense the palm of the left hand. Sense the back of the left hand. Compare the palm of the left hand with the palm of the right. And the back of the left with the back of the right. compare the left thumb, what you sense. There's no judgment in the comparison. You're just observing, you're just meeting your two thumbs right now where they are at. And then the left index finger with the right index finger. Sense the left middle finger with the right. And sense also how when you take your attention to one and the other, that movement of the mind, of the awareness, how it moves from one finger to the other, the ring finger of the left hand with the ring finger of the right, and the pinky of the left and the right. So compare and contrast your left hand as a whole with the right hand as a whole. And now bring both hands and just very gently touch your face with the hands. Have your elbows towards down. And just start to sense the skin of your forehead. You can move it. You can maybe very gentle movement and just explore the bone structure of your skull. Freely just allow the fingers of both hands to move and just observe what you sense, so that we could say that the head is being touched by the hands, by the fingers, but in a way we are both touching and being touched. So the fingers are also being touched by the skull, by the face. And just feel that structure. Usually we do this with another person, but now we're alone here. So. And see as you touch and you explore and you notice the skeletal structures under your hands, how in your mind's eye perhaps there's an image that starts to appear, you know, and then let that go and rest your hands again and just observe your face, your skull. And then once again, bring your hands at the height of your face, but this time have the palms of your hands facing each other. So almost as if you're like ready to separate them a bit, don't touch them. So the hands are separated. They are a bit more separated, like yeah. And as if we're going to clap your hands. And now bring your hands, slowly bring your hands together, and they will meet at the midline. And you do that slowly, and then they touch. You don't need to press, they just touch gently, and then you separate them. And you repeat that a few times slowly. So as if you're clapping in slow motion. And they touch. Then you separate. And the next time they touch, notice what touches first. Do the hands touch exactly all the fingers at the same time? Is there one finger that touches first, another touches after, two fingers touch together? And then as you separate the hands, do they separate the entire hand at the same time, or is there a part of the hand that separates first? And it's okay. We are not trying to touch the hands in any particular way. We're just trying to observe what's happening. And when they're coming together, do you think they're going to touch before they touch, or are you surprised by the moment they touch? Is it before or after you think they're going to touch? And do they meet in the midline, or do they meet a bit to the right or to the left of the midline? And then just rest your arms and hands and just observe what you sense in one hand and the other. Observe also that sense of the midline, that imaginary line that separates the body between the right side and the left side. It's an imaginary line, but it's very practical, a bit like the equator in the planet. And have a sense of that line that comes down through the middle of your forehead, the skull, the neck, the chest, the pelvis. And then bring again the arms in front of your face, facing each other, kind of like in front of your ears. So they are a bit separate, with the elbows just straight down. So your forearms are straight with the fingers towards the ceiling, elbows are bent. And now bring again the hands together. Go slowly and see when are they going to touch and how do they touch. And then separate them again. And the next time you bring them together, stay with the fingers together, with the hands together, and maintain the left hand quiet so the left hand doesn't move. And start to do, maintaining the tips, the right hand together with the left, start to make circles with the tips of the fingers of the right hand around the tips of the fingers of the left hand. So make the left hand doesn't move, and maybe there's parts of the palm of your hand that are also touching, and you make these very small circles in whatever direction you prefer to start with. And see, can you sense all the circles you're making? And what part of your right arm are you moving? Are you moving your hand? Are you moving your elbow? Are you moving your shoulder? Everything. And then go in the other direction. And whenever you're tired, you can bring your hands down. There's no point in doing this and getting tired. And then stop. And once again, separate the hands and bring them together as if you're clapping in slow motion. Just sense that plane of contact, and then let go again. And rest for a moment. I mean, some of these lessons can go for an hour, but we're just going to make a couple more movements. But since your right hand, since your left hand, notice if you can sense any differences between one hand and the other. Is there anything in your right hand that tells you that you were moving it, or anything on the left that tells you that you were just receiving that movement? Bring the hands to face each other again, please, in front of your face, palms facing each other. They're not touching. And now, once again, they're not touching. And now, once again, bring them together. And then, once they're together, do that circle but with the left hand, so that the right hand doesn't move. And maintain a soft breath. Don't hold your breath, don't hold your jaw. Do you sense any tension in your chest or in your lungs or in your rib cage or in your shoulder? Try to let go of any tension. See where you're holding. How can you do that movement even in an easier way? And then change direction and see which direction is easier for you. Usually our first direction, the first choice that we do is usually easier, or maybe just different. And then let go of that and bring your hands down. And see what you sense now in the palms of your hands and the tips of your fingers. Is there a new sensation? It's amazing because often just by bringing your attention to an area of yourself, somehow that area becomes more alive, becomes present. It was always present, but we were not aware of it. And by bringing our awareness to it and by moving it, somehow it becomes present. Let's do one last thing. So please bring your hands to the same position, so apart but facing each other. And now you're going to meet the hands, but instead of meeting them in front of your face on the midline, you're going to meet them in different places. So a bit more to the right of the midline, a bit more to the left, a bit more up, a bit more down. So they meet and they separate, and you can like meet twice there. And then a bit more down, maybe at shoulder height, to the right or to the left. But have a clear intention where they're going to meet, and see, are they both moving? Is one moving more than the other? Is one moving towards the other while the other one is still? Have a clear intention, and then so you know what you're looking at. You can do it above your head. And do they touch when you think they're going to touch? And don't just touch the fingertips, but touch also the base of the palms of your hands. So the outside of your small fingers, the base of your thumb. And then bring them to the initial position, and then once again meet them in the midline. And they both move towards each other. Notice, is there one hand that has a tendency of moving more towards the other than is one more active and one more passive? Would you say that one hand reaches more towards the other while the other one sort of waits? And when they move away, do they move away? Do they start the movement at the same time and they move at the same speed? Or there's one that starts to move away from the other and moves faster? Good. And then let go of the hands, place them on your thighs, and just see how you sense your hands. So the palms, the back of the hands, the fingers, the length of the fingers. Where would you say your hand ends? Sense your arms. Sense the distance between your right shoulder and your right hand, and the distance between the left shoulder and the left hand. Observe how you've organized one hand and the other. Notice if there's any sensation of holding in your jaw or in your breath or in your tongue. Unnecessary. And then bring both hands to your face, and like we did in the beginning of the lesson, and just touch your face, the skin of your skull, of your forehead. And imagine you want to touch that skin with your fingers, but you don't really like place the fingertips of your right hand on your forehead and start to move the hand to the right. So almost as if you want to turn the head to the right, but before the head turns, you bring the skin of the forehead to the right. And you can also see what's happening under your fingers. So there's the skin of your fingers that meet the skin of your forehead. There's the skull behind the skin, and there's also the bones of your fingers. So see if you can first move those tissues before they actually, the bone meets the bone. And if you can explore all those tissues between the skin and the skeleton. You can use your hands, you can use just the fingertips. So there's movement in your hand, there's movement in your elbows and shoulders. You can move your skin, you can maybe even move your skull, your head, your neck as you push. Maybe you're moving your ribs and your shoulder girdle. And within that, the breath is just flowing naturally, as naturally as possible. And see what is your experience. Good. And then just let go and open your eyes. So maybe this was not as short as it should have been, but it's a short lesson, so we can go very deep into all these practices, into all these processes. So this is yeah, just do you have something to share of your experience or how you feel right now?
I would love to now give a session. Having worked through my sensitivity would be wonderful to now try on another body or another person in a body. I don't like that saying.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's very interesting to think that when we are moving someone, we are first of all moving ourselves. So we think of movement happening in space, but the movement happens first of all inside of ourselves, you know. And so there's the joints, the nervous system, everything is in movement. So if that is clear, I think then how you touch the other, how you receive that awareness of the other, but how you touch, how and to a certain extent how you enter the other through your movement is somehow I don't know. I think there is a heightened sensitivity and respect because actually touching. I mean, this is a whole other conversation, but touching is very, very, very. Everything is touch. I mean, touch, like, in order for us to hear, there has to be sound waves that make contact, with our hearing apparatus, let's say. In order for us to see, there have to be uh, photons that make contact, with our eyes, and then the whole process that happens until it reaches our brain and creates an image. Everything is touch, and so touch is something really, really very primitive, very basic, and yet to touch somebody else, it has to be so respectful. We are not just touching their skin; we are touching their entire self, with our entire self. And so I think that the more we are aware of the power of touch, um, I think it's really a culture. And it's strange because we live in a culture where touch became, it's almost like you always have to ask permission, and I think that's good. But sometimes it's almost for the wrong reasons. I think it's just, I think touch is a huge taboo in our society because we don't know how to deal with it. And that's the first of all is because we don't know how to touch ourselves. So I think it's really important. During COVID, I was giving some classes online, and I was telling people, we can't touch each other. There was this thing of social distancing, but don't forget to touch yourself. Don't forget to connect with yourself. You know, there's a lot of things going on. Don't forget to nourish yourself and to continue. You might not be with others, but you're not alone. You are at least with yourself. And that's really very important. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I think you touched on something that we really would like to explore in this particular retreat. The way we touch, the way we are holding space for somebody else, the way we get into contact, and we're going to explore this in very different ways. So just to resume a little bit, first of all, I want to thank you very much for being here today and for this discussion. So Pedro will be teaching at the retreat in September. He will be giving 2 of the classes. They are non-mandatory, so they're going to be in the early morning. So it's gonna help for gentle awakening and at the same time starting to work towards this refinement for the rest of the day. Yes, please tell me.
I have one thing I'd like. You just said holding space. I think that's also interesting to talk about.
Yeah.
What space are we talking about? What is holding space? Holding space is holding the space where we are and trying to be sensitive and to be But when we are touching someone, there's a common space there. So we are holding the space that we know that this person is being touched by us. How far deep are we touching the person? How far deep is the person allowing us to touch? But isn't that space what we are holding? That space of not just the space of contact, but that space of meeting. I think there's a difference between the surface of contact, that's one thing, but then there's the place where we meet. And maybe holding space has to do with that, to that place where we meet the person and the person meets us. And it's strange because it's inside of that person, but it's also inside of us, and that's where the dance happens. It's it's not about the surface of contact. It's way deeper than that. And that's the capacity that we have, human beings, that can be really enhanced and worked. And I think that both structural integrators and Feldenkrais practitioners and other practices, I think this is really something that we should, that's a beautiful area that we work with. It's in that space of what space is it? What are we talking about when we talk about space, holding space?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm excited for you teaching us in September. And thank you so much for today. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.